Today we're talking Australis, a really cool game all about the Eastern Australian current where the turtles, corals, and fishes live. Hello there, welcome to Board Game Barrister, our local game shop in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm Andy, and I'm here with Renee, Ian, and Gordon, and today we're talking Australis, a game all about the Eastern Australian current where we're going to see turtles, coral, and fishes as we swim on by. Let's get into it. Here's what your initial board setup's going to look like when you play the game. We're going to set the main board out on the table. We're going to place 6 advantage cards out on these spaces on the board. Those have all come from our advantage card deck. We've got 2 stacks of competition tiles here, gold and silver metal. And then we have 4 main colors of dice. We're going to put as many of each of those dice as there are players in the game. So if I was set up for 3 players like this, I'm going to take 3 of each of those types of dice, and we always add the 7th first player die in at the end. To start our very first round, we're going to roll all of those dice, and then return them to their respective areas on the board. Our first player is going to get us started by taking their first turn. At the beginning of the game, taking a turn is actually really straightforward. All you do is you select one die and activate its ability. So let's choose a die for each of our 3 players to take on their first turns. Green is going to start us off, and they're going to do that by selecting one of our blue dice, which will move their turtle forward in our actual current here. The highest one they see has a 6 on it here, and higher is normally better when it comes to these dice, so they're going to select that now, and move forward 6 spaces on that current track. Purple dice are all about adding coral. If our orange player decided to add coral, they might select the one with a 7 on it here. They're going to collect that die, and then they're going to look out on the board for the coral territory labeled 7, and they're going to place a coral in their color in that territory on the board. Next up is our fish, and whenever you take a fish die, you're going to grab fish tokens from our supply and collect those. They're going to score you points every round, but only if you have enough food around to feed them. And when I keep saying collect, you're actually going to have a little player board that looks like this, where you're collecting all of these dice that you gather in their respective columns of dice. You're also going to put all your fish right above this area on the board because this is where you're going to be collecting your fish food. And there are 2 more important areas on this player card where you'll be collecting cards. Because whenever you choose to take one of the white dice on your turn, you'll collect that into your player board all the same, but each white die has a number of these rectangles on it that signify that you get to add advantage cards to your board. These advantage cards are going to permanently power up every single die action you take for the rest of the game. So if I chose these 2 advantage cards to add to my board, now I can see that every time I grab a blue die from now on, I get an extra fish, and every time I add a purple die from now on, I get an extra turtle move. Now that final type of die you can take on one of your turns is the red die. The red die allows the player who claims it to be first player next round and get first claim at those dice after they're rolled. Each round we're going to keep going around the table until everybody's gotten 4 dice, which will mean that there will be exactly 1 die left in the supply. And when that happens, we're going to move on to end of round scoring. There's 3 parts to your end of round scoring. The first is your coral. To get your coral score, you're going to look at each area you have coral placed. The player who has the most coral in each of those areas will score this point value. So our pink player, for instance, is the only player with any coral in coral area number 4, which is going to give them 2 points. Some of these areas will award points to first and second place, so coral area number 5 awards 2 points to whoever has the most coral, orange in this case, and 1 point to second place, which is our pink player. And lastly, we've got area 6 here, where we've got a tie for first place, and ties in this case are resolved by the player who has their turtle furthest ahead on the current. Green is ahead of pink, so green is going to get the full 3 points, pink will get 1 point. Next up, we've got fish. Each player is going to individually look at their own collection of fish, and then this little track on your player board says how many points you get depending on how many fish you've fed. So for having at least 3 fish and at least 1 food, you would get 1 point. But because pink has at least 6 fish and at least 2 food, they're going to get 3 points for their fish this round. And the third part of your end of round scoring is going to be your actual position on the current. There's a number on each spot on the current, and that number is how many points you'll score in this phase. But before the end of the round comes, there is a roll-off stage called Turbulence, where everybody's going to take all of the dice they collected this round with numbers on them, so the blue and purple dice and that red first player die. We're going to do a number of roll-offs with those dice, where everybody will roll their own dice onto the table. We're going to look at the lowest value rolled among all of those dice. In this case, it's a 3 on this purple die, and all of the dice of that value are eliminated from the roll-off, so any 3s get removed. Then we do it all again with the remaining dice in front of each player, but you'll see some of those advantage cards you can collect during the game will power up your dice rolls and make certain types of dice even stronger for you to roll. What do you get for winning the roll-off? The winner gets to choose between these 2 types of competition tiles, which will score you points at the end of the game. There are gold tiles and silver tiles, and the reason you might choose to take silver, even though they're generally worth fewer points, is that the silver tiles sometimes come along with extra food tokens to help you feed your fish for the rest of the game. And whoever came in second in the competition is going to get the top tile on the stack that the winner did not take from. The end of Turbulence signifies the end of the round, where we're going to begin the next round by rolling all the dice. We know who's first player, it's the player who took the red die. And we're going to do the same thing, claiming dice, resolving their effects, using those advantage cards we've collected over the course of the game, for a total of 5 rounds. And at the end of our end of round scoring, and our final Turbulence roll-off at the end of round 5, we're going to score up our final points, add in all of our bonuses from our competition tiles, and whoever's got the most points at that point is our final winner.
So Australis is a competitive game, meaning you're playing to win. I want to say that it is more indirectly competitive than directly competitive. By and large, you are doing your own thing, but there are some opportunities where you are competing over resources. You are either competing over corals there's a majority rules for corals. There's also a tiebreaker that can be important of being furthest along the EAC. And then there's a nice little directly competitive roll-off at the end that I found really engaging, even though I never won. I really liked the way that roll-off worked. But the way in which you're really interacting with the other players is by seeing which dice do you think are going to make it back to you? What do you think other people are likely to take? And it's all of this, well, if they do this, I can do that. And then how do you bob and weave when they take the thing that you wanted? I really like that sort of interaction. This right in the midpoint between no one can really screw with me, but they can take the things that I want, and then I have to change my plan. I like that a whole lot.
All right, well, I'm going to take this.
No!
I saw you. I'm not blind.
I would have done the same.
You
I
saw
would have
me,
done
you
it
did the
before
same
you
thing.
anyway. That was never coming around.
Yeah.
And yes, that is totally what I'm going to do. So I activate the cards. So I get 1 fish from there. And I get to move forward 1 place.
You can just pull that out. I won't make it here.
And then I get to place 1 on 6 or less.
So there's a bunch of different paths to victory in this game, and each one of the dice represents basically one of those paths. And I chose a strategy that didn't work out for me, but I learned a bunch about which other paths could potentially benefit me in games in the future. And I think it's interesting because depending on which phase of the game you were in, early, mid, or late, it really determines which one is the stronger of the bunch to pick. For example, early in the game, grabbing cards and using the white dice, which score you absolutely 0 points, and they're pretty much irrelevant when it comes to like how you're going to win the game point-wise, but early game, those built your engine, which determined which dice gave you huge benefits towards the mid and the late game. So really neat kind of combination of the different paths to victory.
Yeah, I focused pretty hard on the coral and territory control by making that my engine. And it didn't really pay off in the very end, but it felt great in like rounds 3 and 4 where I was 10 points ahead of everyone else. So I'm not upset with that. I got some feel goods out of there, and there weren't really any terrible feel bad moments where it was like, oh, now there's no way for me to get to victory because I don't have this.
Yeah, I think the fact that this does have so many different like core board game elements in it, you can't say this is a territory control game, this is a dice drafting game. Those things are in it, but I would never sit somebody down to this and say that's what we're going to be doing, because they'd go, you lied, that's a tiny portion of it. But it also means that most people are going to find something to engage with and enjoy as they play the game, which I think is really cool.
3,
5.
2.
Those are pretty nice rolls.
4.
8.
6.
You're
It's the
kidding.
4.
Yes, get him out of
I'm
here.
not
Yeah,
surprised.
baby.
Yeah, I typically don't play heavy strategy games or heavy competitive games, but this one felt like a really nice time just seeing how everything was going and knowing that you were always doing something to move forward. Even if you weren't going to win in the end, it didn't have many of the feel-bads that you sometimes have from heavily competitive, oh, this is the only strategy you can possibly take to victory games.
Got one more call out, and that is that at least 3 to 5 times during our game, a very subtle rules nuance came up, and at least 2 people at the table each of those times went, oh, I didn't know that's how that worked, I would have done things differently. And I just want you to be aware before you play that that was a thing that came up because there are subtle interactions between tiebreakers or choices you can make that will come up here and there. And maybe you'll play yours perfectly, maybe you'll have the same experience we did. Hey, if you're still watching because you like turtles and nature and board games, you should check out our video on In the Footsteps of Darwin. It was another really cool game about nature and being on the Beagle with Charles Darwin himself, and you get to take your own nature journal. Check that one out. For the time being, you can leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe if you want to see new videos every week when we post them, and check out our online store where you will find Australis. Thanks for joining us this week, and we'll see you next time.